Today we're getting into the strange, stubborn, slightly obsessive world of Whataburger, a burger chain that somehow became a state of mind. Harmon Dobson, the man behind the burger. Before he ever flipped a patty, he had already lived about 4 different lives. Born in Oklahoma, raised on a cattle farm in Arkansas, he dropped out of college during the Depression to help keep the family from going under. Once that crisis passed, he didn't slow down. Apprentice ironworker, shipbuilder in New York, pipeline fitter in North Africa, diamond trader, oil wildcatter, bush pilot, if you're reading that and feeling a little underaccomplished. That's a reasonable reaction. The thing about Dobson was that he wasn't just restless, he was good at things. He just never stayed long enough to let any one of them define him, until Texas did it for him. In early 1950, a failed oil venture left him broke in Corpus Christi with limited options and what sounds like a colossal amount of ambition still intact. Most people look for something modest in that situation. Dobson decided to make the biggest burger anyone had ever tried to sell at a roadside stand. His idea wasn't to compete on price or speed or some gimmick, his idea was scale. He wanted a burger so undeniably massive that when someone bit into it, they'd say it out loud without meaning to, "Whataburger." He got the trademark in June of 1950. The first location opened on Ayers Street in Corpus Christi that August, directly across from Del Mar College. The original Whataburger, a quarter-pound beef patty on a wide 5-inch bun, fresh lettuce, 3 slices of tomato, 4 dill pickles, chopped onions, ketchup, and mustard. 3 inches thick. 25 cents on the expensive end for burgers at the time. The first 3 days were quiet, a total of $191 across the 3. Then word started spreading. On day 4, he sold 551 burgers in a single afternoon. The bet that people would pay a little more for something genuinely large and genuinely good had turned out to be correct. He had a co-founder, a man named Paul Burton. That partnership lasted about a year before ending over something almost comically small. In 1951, Dobson wanted to raise the price by a nickel. 5 cents. Burton walked. They split, Burton kept San Antonio, Dobson took the rest, and Dobson immediately raised the price to 35 cents. Burton, one assumes, had some feelings about that. From there, Whataburger expanded methodically. A second location opened in Kingsville in 1952. Joe Andrews Sr. became the first franchise owner in 1953. Opening in Alice, Texas by 1959, the chain had crossed state lines into Pensacola, Florida. By 1960, it was running across Texas, Florida, and Tennessee. Dobson was also an avid pilot, a detail that would become quietly tragic. And that love of flying indirectly gave the brand its most iconic visual identity. In 1961, he designed the first orange and white striped A-frame building in Odessa, Texas. IHOP was doing its own A-frame version around the same period, but eventually walked away from the design by 1979. Whataburger held on. The orange and white stripes became so embedded in the brand that the buildings became landmarks. Texans navigated by them. By 1965, just in the Coastal Bend area, Whataburger was selling 15,000 burgers a day. The Flying W logo arrived in 1967 when there were 40 locations across 4 states. And here, if you're the kind of person who goes deep on the real origin stories behind things people get strangely attached to, you're going to want to stay for what comes next. What happens after 1967 is the part of this story most people have never heard. Subscribe now so you don't miss the next one either. April 11th, 1967. Dobson and a business associate took off from a small airport in La Porte in his Cessna Skymaster, headed to Victoria, Texas. Both engines failed shortly after takeoff, somewhere between 75 and 100 feet in the air. The plane went down. Dobson died on impact. He was 49 years old. What happened next is the part of the Whataburger story that doesn't get told nearly enough. Grace Dobson, known to the company as Lady Grace, had been with Harmon since their first date at Whataburger No. 3 in Corpus Christi in 1955. Now she was a widow with 3 young children and a fast-growing burger chain. Everyone around her had the same advice: sell it. The business world of 1967 was not brimming with confidence in women running restaurant companies. Grace didn't see it that way. That's what made me mad. Made me want to fight, she said later. So she didn't sell. She became chairwoman of the board in 1969 and spent the next 4 decades doing exactly what the naysayers said she couldn't. She took Whataburger from 40 locations to over 1,000, lived quietly in the same house Harmon had bought her, put the money mostly toward charities, and never let the company go. Her son Tom became CEO in 1993. She passed away in 2005. The women leading Whataburger today, including CEO Debbie Stroud, still name Lady Grace as their foundational reference point. Under the Dobson family, the menu expanded alongside the footprint. The first drive-thru opened in 1971, the 100th store in 1972, 300 locations by 1980. The chicken sandwich and breakfast taquitos arrived in 1982. The honey butter chicken biscuit came later and developed a following that is, by any reasonable measure, difficult to overstate. The history isn't spotless. In 2010, a 7-year-old was burned when gravy spilled on her legs. Nearly the same scenario repeated in 2018 with a 5-year-old, and a lawsuit followed. A 2017 wrongful death suit arose from the on-the-job death of an employee. The company faced criticism after terminating an employee for wearing a Black Lives Matter mask and has faced racial discrimination allegations in hiring. And then there was the mouse. In 2019, a video went viral of a rodent scurrying across a Whataburger counter and, in what may be the most Texas-specific health code incident ever filmed, leaping directly into a deep fryer. The gun policy is its own chapter. In 2015, after Texas passed a law permitting open carry in public spaces, Whataburger announced it was opting out. CEO Preston Atkinson, who noted twice in his open letter that he was himself a hunter with a concealed carry license, said customers and employees had expressed discomfort and the family atmosphere of the restaurant came first. A reasonable position. In some corners, it landed like a declaration of war. Open Carry Texas called it premature and irresponsible and launched a boycott immediately. For a Texas institution to suggest the drive-thru wasn't the place for visible rifles was, to certain people, roughly equivalent to an act of cultural treason. And yet, none of it moved the loyalty in any permanent direction. The controversies faded, the boycotts fizzled, the lawsuits settled, the viral mouse became a meme and then a memory. A marketing professor at UT Austin's McCombs School of Business put it plainly, Whataburger carries something authentically Texan that's almost impossible to manufacture. It's the little league teams and church groups and high school kids who've been filing into those orange and white dining rooms for decades. It's the 24-hour schedule that makes it where you end up at 2 in the morning after a concert, after prom, after a long shift, after anything. Across cities like Houston and San Antonio, that orange and white A-frame functions like a church steeple in a smaller town. It tells you where you are. It tells you something will be open and will be exactly the same as always. In 2001, the Texas legislature passed a resolution formally proclaiming Whataburger a Texas treasure. Not a popular chain, a treasure. Part of the loyalty also lives in a bottle of ketchup. Whataburger Fancy Ketchup, a slightly thicker, slightly sweeter proprietary blend brought to your table on a condiment tray. Sounds minor. It is not treated as minor. The Fancy Ketchup has its own fan Facebook page. Home cooks have spent serious time trying to reverse engineer the recipe. It has generated Etsy merchandise. In 2013, the chain started bottling it for grocery stores, beginning at Heb in Texas, then expanding to Walmart, Kroger, Winn-Dixie, and others. It's now a 17-item retail line in over 8,000 stores across 37 states. Fancy Ketchup is currently the fastest-growing ketchup brand in the country. A condiment from a regional burger chain is outpacing national brands. That is factually accurate. Then there are the weddings. The formal wedding program didn't start as marketing, it started because fans were already doing it on their own. Couples in wedding dresses rolling through the drive-thru at midnight for honey butter chicken biscuits, the chain catering late-night receptions, engagement photos in parking lots under orange and white stripes. Eventually, the company built a structure around it. In 2019, 6 couples got married at Whataburger locations on Valentine's Day. On the chain's 75th anniversary in 2025, one couple won a contest and had a full wedding at the Las Vegas Strip location, vintage car, Vegas showgirls, custom Whataburger cake. There is a Whataburger Museum of Art on social media. Whataburger-themed wedding cakes, prom photos, and baby showers. A Flying W dartboard you can buy online. This stopped being a fast food company a long time ago. It became a cultural institution wearing the shape of one. Which is what made the summer of 2019 feel to a lot of Texas like a civic funeral. In June of that year, a majority stake in Whataburger was sold to Bet Capital Partners, a Chicago-based private equity firm. The chain's social media team posted, "Texas, we don't want you to be upset." Texas was very upset. Texas Monthly ran a piece titled, "Whataburger has been sold to the Yanks." A criminal defense attorney demanded Chicago keep its hands off the burgers. Houston Texans star J.J. Watt called on fans to pull their money and buy the brand back. It was not treated as a business transaction, it was treated as a loss. The sale put fresh fuel on a debate burning since 2017. When a Foursquare study published by Business Insider claimed In-N-Out was actually the most popular fast food restaurant in Texas. Critics pointed out Foursquare was an app most people hadn't actively used since 2009, and that In-N-Out had about 35 Texas locations compared to Whataburger's nearly 670. Business Insider eventually deleted the tweet, but the study lingered as a symbol of something larger, new arrivals bringing their preferences into Texas, and Whataburger no longer being the automatic answer it once was. And still, after all of it, the loyalty held. Because the cult of Whataburger was never really about the company. It was about what the company stands in for. Strip away the private equity stake, the Chicago boardroom, the lawsuits, the viral rodent, and what's left is still the thing Harmon Dobson built after a failed oil deal left him broke in 1950. A burger big enough you needed 2 hands, made to order, in a place that felt like it belonged to the people eating there. That is a hard thing to dilute. Turns out, it's also a hard thing to fully sell, even when you technically sell it. If this is the kind of story you'll sit with, the real history behind the things people get unreasonably attached to, there's a lot more where this came from. Subscribing is the only way to make sure you see the next one when it drops. And down in the comments, Whataburger devotee? Or does the whole thing leave you cold? If you're from Texas, that's probably not a question you need to think about, but we want to hear it anyway.